Good morning, Your Excellency, Madam Director General, Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, dear colleagues and friends. It's my pleasure to be opening this special meeting of the Nizami Ganjavi Center about the future of multilateralism and all the implications thereof. We are greatly honored to have with us this morning the Director General of the United Nations Office at Geneva, Madame Tatiana Valovaya, and we look forward to hearing her introductory remarks. We're very glad and honored to have you with us, Madam.
Thank you very much, and the pleasure is mine and the honor is mine, because it has become a great tradition for United Nations office here in Geneva to welcome you for this special meeting, for this special event at the beginning of every year. And I really think that starting the new year with hosting these very important discussions with so many outstanding statesmen and stateswomen with so many outstanding minds, it's really very great opportunity for multilateral system here in Geneva to have an exchange with you and to try to find the solutions to the current global challenges. Unfortunately, we're living in the world of cascading challenges. The year 2023 was a very difficult year because all the existing conflicts, all the existing humanitarian tragedies, all the existing challenges to the humanity, including conflicts and military conflicts, including Ukraine, including other parts of the world, they unfortunately remained with us without solutions. But the new conflicts appeared, and the current tragic situation in Middle East is another example that solutions can be found only within the multilateral system. Without all the member states working together, we can't find the solution. But we also saw during 2023 that the multilateral system is in dire need of transformation. And Secretary General of the United Nations was very, very transparent for many years when he was speaking about necessity to rethink multilateralism, to make multilateralism fit for purpose, fit for 21st century, to make multilateralism inclusive and networking and effective. And when we are talking about inclusive multilateralism, there are many ingredients to this view. First and foremost, of course, we have to understand that we are living in the world where the voices of all the nations, of all the member states of the United Nations are equal and have to be heard and have to be taken into account. But at the same time, we understand that governments, states are no longer the only actors in the international arena. We have civil society, we have non-governmental organizations, we have academia, we have private sector, we have young people, and without all of us working together, we can't find the solutions. That's why for us it's so important as the United Nations to work with Nizami Ganjavi Center, to work with all of you, exactly to try to see how all of us can think about better solutions for the current problems. And when I look at the agenda of your meetings here in Geneva, I'm really very pleased to see that you are planning to have discussions exactly on the issues which are the key priority for the United Nations in 2024. You are going to speak about the preparation and the road to the summit of the future. For us, it's the key event of 2024. It's the key event which is also might be leading to our better understanding of the lessons learned by our multilateral system over the last, well, practically 80 years. Because we all understand that multilateral system has to be reshaped with each great transformation of the humanity. Initially, multilateral system, how we perceive it now, multilateral organization, was established practically here in Geneva with the League of Nations. But then, after the Second World War, after the lessons learned after the Second World War, it was reshaped to the United Nations. Now, we're witnessing the most tense geopolitical conflicts since the Second World War. We see the crisis in all spheres of our activities. That's why we have to reshape this system once again. And I'm very pleased that one of your sections you're going to have is about the global governance. But global governance is a key, but not the only part of our reshaping the multilateral system. We have to talk about transformation of the financial system. And I'm very pleased that I see one of the panels you're going to have. It's about financing sustainable development goals. For us, the United Nations is the key issue. And here in Geneva, we have our special instruments, including Building Bridges Week. We hold here every year where we exactly discuss the situation, how we can build a bridge between financial community, those who have financial resources, and developing world, developing countries who really need financial resources. It's enough to say that, well, practically 3.3 billion of people in the world, they live in the countries which spend more on debt payments than on health or education. Also, of course, we have to talk about peace and new agenda for peace, which was presented by Secretary General last year. Key issue these days. And maybe that's exactly when you have such a difficult geopolitical situation, where you have more and more military conflicts. It's time really to make decisive measures. Of course, climate change remains here with us, and 2023, now it's official, was declared the hottest year of the human history. We have to talk about the challenges of modern technologies and many, many, many other issues. But as I said at the beginning, for us, it's very, very important to listen to diversity of views and really to be as inclusive as we can. Yesterday, I had the pleasure to open another very symbolic event here in the Palais des Nations. Every year at the beginning, we have a very interesting event for 700 young girls and boys from schools, from 40 schools in 22 countries who come here for United Nations model every year. And we listen to them. We listen to these very young boys and girls, listen to their vision and their voices. And the next day, we want to listen to your voices, the voices of people who have fantastic experience, who have really wisdom you can share with us and help us really working together for the current generation of politicians, of those who work for the United Nations, for the countries, to find the solution. So once again, thank you for coming. I'm really humbled to honor all of you here. And as always, we are looking forward to your discussions, and hopefully that will help us to have the summit of the future, to have the pact on the future, and to have a vision for the transformation of a multilateral system. Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Director General. Thank you for these words of introduction. May I now pass the floor to my friend Tarja Halonen, an extremely popular former president of Finland, and a person extremely engaged in a variety of concerns across the world. I remember thinking about meeting her at some meeting, and I was told, oh, but she's gone to Cabo Verde. She's not available for some meeting in Europe. Tarja has been, just like her country, Finland, has been engaged in supporting a great variety of United Nations programs. I pass the floor to you, Madam President.
Thank you very much, Vaira. You are always very... Okay. So thank you very much, Vaira. You are always very friendly for us. But ladies and gentlemen, dear friends, it is, of course, for all of us a great pleasure to participate at this high-level event on the future of multilateralism. Since the declaration on the commemoration of the 75th anniversary of the United Nations in 2020, member states have been calling for the upgrading of the UN to effectively respond to the challenges of today and tomorrow. This year, we have a great opportunity to be ambitious. With the Summit for the Future in September, there is a real chance for a new direction for multilateral cooperation. And we have 4 reasons for that achievement. The world is facing multiple and interconnected crises that require stronger and more effective international cooperation. Traditional challenges have not disappeared, and the new risks are rising. The 3 pillars of the UN are sustainable development, human rights and humanitarian issues, and peace and security. United Nations member states have agreed to pursue a sustainable future and to leave no one behind. Agenda 2030 is truly our blueprint for a better, more secure and healthy planet. As you all remember, we are now at a halfway point in the implementation of the Sustainable Development Goals. It is clear that we are lagging behind on the implementation. I believe that the policy briefs issued by UN Secretary General Antonio Guterres provide an excellent basis how to tackle the obstacles and take forward solutions to more effectively deliver for the people and the planet. This meeting will give us possibility to discuss the issues vital for the Summit of Future. So let me raise some key points I see important. First, I see important to reaffirm shared objectives and principles. No country can meet the present challenges alone, not even the biggest ones. We need unity and cooperation. Secondly, the current system is not providing the holistic responses to address the multidimensionality and interconnectedness of the crisis we experience today. We must think big and across the silos and for the more interconnected and more efficient ways of responding to traditional threats, but also to non-military threats. It's good to remind when we have all these wars. We must also ensure more effective cooperation between state and non-state actors, as it has already mentioned. The COVID-19 pandemic and accelerating climate and environmental crises are examples of the complex challenges we are currently facing. The impact of the pandemic was particularly severe on the world's poorest and the most vulnerable. The pandemic has significantly affected efforts to combat poverty, inequality, and it stored and put many health-related indicators off track. So climate change is one of the most important challenges for sustainable development. It strengthens and it is connected with many other sustainability problems such as poverty and inequality. Climate events can threaten the very foundations of human life. Thirdly, the shifting world order. Geopolitical divisions and polarization are growing. We are experiencing the highest number of violent conflicts since the Second World War. 1/4 of the humanity, 2 billion people, are living in conflict areas today. War has also returned to Europe with the Russian invasion in Ukraine. In the Middle East, war has to lead a massive number of civilian casualties and risk widening throughout the region. It must be remembered that United Nations has not only endured, but it has remained the very center of multilateral system. We need investments to conflict prevention and peace building. We also need to adjust the organization to a more fragmented geopolitical landscape to better reflect today's world. So, and then finally, we need more human resources. I would like to highlight that achieving gender equality is absolutely one of the keys to a sustainable future. I'm very happy that UN Secretary General has instructed the United Nations system, its support the member states in preparing for a summit of the future must reflect the commitment to gender equality and women's rights. Gender equality is right for the individual, but it's also very beneficial for the society as a whole, as we know. We simply do better with the participation and insights of the whole humanity. I thank you for your attention.
Thank you very much, President Howman, for this quite succinct and comprehensive overview of where we stand and the important role that the United Nations continues to play in world affairs, as well as the summit of the future, which hopefully will give us some new avenues for improving the situations as they stand today. I then now pass on the floor to Dr. Ismail Sergeldin, my co-chair and colleague for many years together, an erudite man with great experience, both in science and in finance and everything one can think of. Ismail, the floor is yours.
I think this is, yeah, thank you, sorry, thank you. Thank you, Madam Chair. Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, we live in troubled times where the big powers brazenly ignore the overwhelming positions of the international community as expressed in landslide votes in the United Nations General Assembly. Whether it be Russia in Ukraine or the US, Israel in Gaza, the powerful say we are going to continue what we do, whatever the international community thinks. And that, of course, is a big challenge on how to deal with it. But it's not the biggest challenge because we also have conditions of hunger, poverty, and inequality, including gender inequality, that have worsened in the last few years. And thus the UN Secretary General has called for a summit for the future to be held in New York in September. And we have gathered here to reflect and elucidate the various issues that this summit should address. We've identified 6 broad topics that we intend to address through the upcoming panel discussions. The universally adopted Sustainable Development Goals have set the agenda for global action from 2015 to 2030. But our advance on that path has been significantly hindered by the COVID-19 pandemic and resulting economic policies. The situation of climate change shows that we are not on a path that can keep global warming under 1.5 degrees by 2100, or even 2 degrees may be slipping through our fingers. We must address the needs of mitigation along with adaptation and resilience in this existential challenge. And this would require investing trillions of dollars per year for several decades. However, not making these investments is likely to cause much larger economic losses and devastation and miseries on an unprecedented scale. So we must find the means to finance the implementation of the SDGs. But these global SDGs and their financing require an effective and nimble system of global governance. And thus, as President Halonen has said, and Madame Balaba has said, we need to rethink global governance with the UN at the center and the Bretton Woods system governing the financial system. And remember, they were designed some 80 years ago, in a very different world. Reforms should focus on inclusivity in decision-making, particularly in the UN Security Council and the financial bodies like the IMF and the World Bank. Other priorities include leadership, diversity, transparency, accountability, anti-corruption efforts, and institutions must address modern challenges like climate change, cybersecurity, global health, income inequality, and artificial intelligence and other technologies. Enhancing multilateralism, respecting sovereignty, and involving civil societies and NGOs are crucial for these institutions' effectiveness in promoting both global peace and sustainable development. Looking at wars, not just those in Ukraine and Gaza, but also the many conflicts that the media do not mention, underscores the urgency of a new peace agenda that focuses on diplomacy, addressing inequality, good governance, economic development to tackle conflicts' roots, adhering to international law and human rights with accountability for violations, and prioritizing humanitarian needs with safe aid corridors are crucial. And efforts should include early warning systems, conflict prevention, post-conflict rebuilding, and sustainable development, necessitating global collaboration across nations, international bodies, civil society, and the private sector. And in that, we have learned much about our campaign for health for all. For the COVID pandemic has brought to light several key lessons, emphasizing the need for global collaboration and the necessity of international cooperation and necessity of collaboration, particularly in strengthening the World Health Organization for effective response to global health threats. Treatments should be for all who need them, not only for those who can afford to buy them. Leaving no one behind, as Madam President said, requires reducing global health and education disparities as we tackle poverty and inequality and support the vulnerable and empower the marginalized. All that while considering the rights of future generations to ensure a sustainable, fair, and just world. Our children are entitled to clean air, clean water, and fertile soils, as well as a temperate climate. Now, the scientific breakthroughs are coming fast. Artificial intelligence, AI, presents both transformative possibilities and risks, including fake media creation that could affect elections, as well as military applications that could be lethal. Mitigating these risks necessitates ethical practices, regulations, and technology for media verification. AI's potential to widen the digital divide is also significant. It could exacerbate inequality if primarily accessible for the wealthy. Conversely, its fair use in healthcare and education can reduce this divide. Indeed, it is compelling that we cover all these topics in the next 2 days. I believe we have set out an important and exciting agenda, and I look forward to our productive discussions from which I'm sure I will learn a lot. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Serageldin. We have now a presentation from our friend Boris Tadic, President of Serbia from 2004 to 2012, a country that remains of great interest, both to its neighbors to the east and its neighbors to the north and south and the west. President Tadic, the microphone and the floor is yours.
Thank you, Vaira. Thank you, dear friends, for having the opportunity to participate on this forum, which is happening in the extremely exciting and the conflicting period of the history of mankind. And we all agree that we are living in totally unpredictable and very dangerous period of this history. And for historians, this is very interesting time. But for the current leaders, this is extremely difficult period of our common history. And we all agree that the reform of the multilateral system is our common need. And we all agree that we have to work on that as soon as possible because the current system is not functioning anymore. But my question is, in such circumstances, who is going to reform the multilateral system? Who has to do that? I mean, we know that the big powers are always in charge for such work and such global projects, but we have so opposed the global power right now, and I'm not sure that they are even able to talk about simple things. And how we can imagine them to talk about such complex issue, which is a reforming multilateral system and system of United Nations. They are not talking to each other. I mean, they are going to be far and far from each other, and they are opposing to each other in every single issue which is affecting current world, but how they can come together in one room and to discuss issues of the multilateralism and the reforming of United Nations system, for example. First of all, I think that we have to rethink philosophy of multilateralism, what is foundation and basically which kind of principles we have to discuss regarding multilateralism in the future. I mean, we are living in a different world. Things are changing. We have the new economic and the military powers. We have a new situation in the global arena. And only 20 years ago, we couldn't imagine China is going to be such a powerful and a significant player in the international arena. And nowadays we have to imagine which is going to be the role of the new powers in the future. In that context, we have to think about reforming multilateral system by predicting new situation in next 10 and 20 years. I mean, India is going to be inevitable player for sure. And India is going to be one of the crucial economic power, but also military power in the next 20 years. But nowadays we are not even considering India as such important country. And we are not even mentioning India in terms of changing multilateral system in the world nowadays. We are thinking about Russia and we are thinking about United States, now also China. But we see regarding conflict in the Middle East and Ukraine that those powers are so opposed and they are not able to talk about current problems that are affecting the whole world. I think that we cannot think about serious reforming of multilateralism without solving problem and conflict in Ukraine and the Middle East. If that is reality in which we have to think about reforming multilateralism, we have to ask ourselves how we are imagining solution for the current conflict. Are we able even to define the current characteristics of the conflict and the possible solutions in Ukraine? I'm not sure that two opposed sides are even able to define the possible solution right now, to imagine what can be the solution for the current situation in Ukraine. I mean, two sides are becoming so stable in the conflicting zones. We have a front which is defined. Finally, we have a Ukraine which is intending to expel from its own territory Russian troops, and we have a Russian troops that are not going to leave such territory. And in these circumstances, it's very difficult even to imagine a peaceful solution. But without peaceful solution and the kind of agreement between Ukraine and Russia, we cannot even think about reforming multilateralism in reality. This is what I think right now. We are talking about very different topics. We are talking about future of the world. We are talking about the need for the new financing pact for the implementation of SDG. We are talking about a digital compact and new technologies and artificial intelligence. We are talking about the health system for all. But can you imagine right now the world affected by new virus? New pandemic. We had such experience a few years ago, and that was a period before conflict in Ukraine and the Middle East. And even in that time, we didn't have a cooperation between the health systems and the scientific institutions coming from the big powers. We had more competition than cooperation. Can you imagine nowadays a world affected by pandemic during the conflict in Ukraine? Maybe, but that would be possible development of the situation and which is bringing together big powers and to understand, to wake up from the current situation and to think seriously about possible solution for such pandemic that can affect the world. But I'm afraid that in the current situation where we are so divided, we are not able to think together about virus, which is our common enemy, and the pandemic that can come in the future. In that context, I think if we are thinking realistically, we have to think firstly about solving existing conflicts, and after that, to think about restructuring and reforming multilateral system in the world. Otherwise, we are going to waste time and we are not going to be efficient enough. But situation is so dangerous, and I'm finishing with that we cannot be really optimistic right now regarding current situation. This is reality in which we are living, and we have to be more focused on trying to solve the conflict that's existing right now. Yesterday, during the dinner, I tried to mention some possible solutions right now. What can be solution for the war in Ukraine? What can be solution for the conflict in Gaza? As Vaira have said, I'm coming from Serbia, from the Balkans, which was involved in a horrible and terrible conflict between very close people with this almost same DNA, with the same language, same culture. The conflict was horrible. And the multilateral institutions have been trying to contribute to the peaceful solutions during our horrible period of our history. But I'm not sure that even in that time, the credibility of multilateral institutions was once again confirmed, because even today we have a division as an outcome of the decision of multilateral institutions, ICC and ICG. In Yugoslavia, former Yugoslavian countries, we have a big and significant division regarding, was it the genocide in Srebrenica or not? And nowadays I'm coming here and I hear from the CNN that is going to be new process in the court regarding, in the Court of United Nations regarding possible genocide in Gaza. Is the solution of the court is going to bring kind of peaceful process, or a solution of the court is going to be new conflicting period of the history? This is what I'm asking ourselves. The very, very difficult situation we have right now, but we don't have alternative. We have to think about multilateralism, otherwise we are going to be in bigger trouble.
Thank you, President Tadic. It now is my duty to wrap up this morning's opening session. And may I present to you some thoughts for consideration. We started, as Boris pointed out, we started our debates already last night at dinner. This morning, we have heard some very succinct and serious outlines of the main challenges that multilateralism faces in the future. And I'd like to raise the question of why is it that in its 75 years and more of existence, why do the bodies of an international nature only achieve so much and then they reach some kind of wall? It's not a glass wall, it's a brick wall, and they cannot progress, they cannot go further. I would submit for your consideration, just for the sake of argument, that the depth of the problem is greater than we realized. And I think Boris has been pointing out that we are faced with really, really serious problems. Why is it that intelligent people from across the world gather together, be it in Geneva or in New York, are able to solicit, as Madam Director General pointed out, the best minds and the experts from across the world in terms of posing the diagnosis of what it is that ails our planet, what it is that ails humanity and our human societies. Then we look back to the structures of governance of different countries, the structures of governance of the multilateral organizations themselves. If we take the United Nations, we realize that here is an organization that was founded under very specific historical circumstances. The end of the disastrous Second World War, with its untold millions of victims and people falling at the battleground, being deliberately murdered in gas chambers, being killed in air raids that go on for weeks and months on end. The desire to escape from that was the main impetus for creating the United Nations. Nevertheless, when you look at its structure, we realize that it's the winners of the Second World War, winner take all, definitely being the principle for this institution being created. The winners of the Second World War were put in a privileged position, having veto powers in the Security Council. And from then on, we have been faced with a bilateral world. And no matter how much people say that at some point the bilaterality disappeared and we had unilaterality, that is an illusion. There has never been a unilateral world, and I hope there never will be, in that sense that some people understand it. A unilateral world in the sense that we will actually be able to be humane, human beings, one to another, nation to another, to behave in a human way, then we could happily embrace something that we would call unilaterality. But basically, the concern about having two wings of opposing ideologies and opposing points of view is built into the very structure of the United Nations. It's just like in a court of law, when you have an opposition between the parties, the defendant and the accuser. Whereas we know, for instance, in marital law, it was a great discovery when in marital law, judges would say, why don't the parties actually have debates and discuss with each other instead of going out and having a court case? Well, these examples have led many to say that all the conflicts that Boris was mentioning, sooner or later, they will have to end up at the discussion table, and one would need to come to a verbal agreement. And I'd like to point out to you that this is a pious hope, but for the success of which I have very little conviction that it will bring a result. The reason being the following. When we have a debate or a dialogue or negotiation between two sides, we implicitly assume that the other side is like us. We imagine it's a reflex, it's a human reflex. If I am a reasonable human being, able to weigh arguments for and contra, and deciding possibly a compromise between two opposing views and so forth, I take it for granted, but then my opposing partner is equally rational and equally full of goodwill. But that simply is not the case in most cases of conflict. I think the Israel-Gaza situation and the Ukraine-Russia situation is a really iconic example of the impossibility of bringing together by this debate points of view that assume the postulates that are entirely different. If Hamas attacks Israel with the idea that Allah will be pleased for every Jew that is being killed, then there's no room for discussion about how it can cohabit with Israel. If Israel feels that it must destroy Hamas before it can actually engage with Palestinians, then there's no hope for any kind of two-state solution and a possibility of living together. When Russia declares that it is simply having military exercises and has no intention of attacking Ukraine, and then marches in with all its armies and its tanks the next morning, or when it continues to say that we are not attacking anybody, but we are being attacked or being threatened with attack, which is complete nonsense, then it's clear that having a debate with such a partner is going to be difficult. If I may give you a little anecdote in terms of what it means to have a partner with whom you can engage, is my, my very first meeting with President Putin early in his mandate. I was elected as president of a parliamentary republic of Latvia, as a tiny country next to a very large one, in 1999. President Putin's candidacy for the presidency of the Russian Federation was announced by President Yeltsin at his New Year's Eve speech of the year 2000. We had, I got a signal from the Kremlin to have a meeting on neutral ground in Austria to discuss with President Putin how my country, Latvia, could improve its relations with Russia, which had not been very happy, to be quite blunt about it, about the independence of the three Baltic countries, mine included. So I was told that we could meet and have a private discussion, very discreet, without the press being present and any interference, if you like, a very free and open and friendly debate. Well, the friendly debate started like this. President Putin was in a little village, St. Christoph in Austria, and the Russian side announced that Latvia, in my person, could come with one security officer, no more, and that I should come alone. Well, I said, sorry, I really cannot do that because I need to have somebody from my chancellery and I need somebody from the foreign ministry. I cannot have bilateral meetings as president. I might be accused of treason or something like that. So we arrive in St. Christoph and we barely get a room because President Putin is there with 117 security officers, whereas I've been told that I should have one. Well, that was to sort of remind the difference in size of our two countries. Then we were told that we were going to have a friendly dinner and there was no agenda, no documents, no talking points, just getting to know each other and establish friendly relations. So, of course, we arrive and we expect for the friendly dinner to be announced at 8 o'clock. At 8 o'clock, we are told that it's not going to be a dinner, but an official bilateral meeting. As for dinner, it turns out that at 8 o'clock, the little sort of mountain resort hotel that we are staying at, the dining room closes at 8 o'clock, and therefore we will go without food that evening. And just then and there, I, as a psychologist, I say to myself, now here is somebody who's trying to send messages of an indirect kind, but we will be patient, we'll accept it. We sit down at the table, no agenda and no documents. I arrive, as the French say, comme une fleur, like a flower, with nothing in my hands, because that was the idea. And then President Putin's assistant comes and puts in front of him a document pile this big, and he starts leafing through the document pile and complaining, now you are doing this to your Russian-speaking citizens and this is unfair. I say, well, look, there is a difference between citizens and non-citizens. Clearly, for instance, I think in every country in the world, non-citizens have the right of residence, foreign residence, but you have to have citizenship in order to wait. But this is unfair that they don't have automatic citizenship. I said, well, no, everybody has to go through a process. When a country is recreated after 50 years of foreign occupation, you and so on. So we had this pile of documents and I'm standing there with none at all. Well, if I may say so myself, I managed to hold my own as far as the debate was concerned. But my conclusion was, here is a partner in dialogue who absolutely cannot be trusted. Not only does everything he tells you, he intentionally makes it, he lies you, He lies through his teeth to show you that I am the representative of a big country and you are just the representative of a small country, and I can do what I please and you just have to lump it. And I think that this is what we are, yesterday, even my friend Boris Tadic at dinner was saying, oh, well, if Russia decides and wins the war in Ukraine, of course, the next place where they're going to is going to be Latvia, and the Baltics cannot be defended. Boris, I'm sorry to contradict you, but the Baltics can be defended and they will be defended. But what I think the multilateral system has to recognize that the lip service we pay to the fact that Madam Director General quite rightly reminded us, the United Nations is made of nations and every nation is represented. And this implicit postulate for all international debate, the bigger you are, the more you have rights, and the smaller you are, the less you have. Among the many inequalities and problems that we have to solve that have been already alluded to at this table here, at this discussion table, and will be in the next day or two, I would draw your attention to the fact that big and small should be added to the list of prejudices that govern our debate, and that we have to accept that the rights of small nations, just as we accept the rights of the poor, of the technologically undeveloped, of women as against men, and so on and so forth, the North against the South, and you name every other kind of minority. Ladies and gentlemen, with this, I conclude this morning's session.